Today on Waiting for the Encore, my guest is KALU James. KALU is frontman of his own soulful, funky, psychedelic project, KALU and the Electric Joint. Born and raised in Nigeria, the depth of his musical influence and worldly experience come through in not just his songs, but his perspective and personality as well. He's a really warm and pleasant guy to talk with, so please enjoy my chat with KALU James.
All right, joining me today, Mr. KALU James. So happy to have you here. It's good to see you. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, man. So good to see you too. Good to be seen.
Heck yeah, man. So why don't you take us back to the beginning of this whole lockdown, and kind of we'll start off. You can fill us in on where you were headed before the lockdown started. What did you have planned for the spring and the summer, and what have you been doing to kind of deal with the necessary change that we're all dealing with, and how have you been keeping yourself busy these last, whatever it's been, 7 months or so?
Yeah, I know, right? Man, our last show before the pandemic was February 28th, and it was with Think No Think and Medicine Man. That was like right in the beginning of what was going to look like South by. We had a single planned, and then the pandemic and the shutdown happened. And for me, I am so used to being on the move, like most people are, that the idea that I could just stop was a very, very hard thing for me to reconcile with, just like everyone else. But I've been, because of Sims and Ham, I've been able to consistently have a therapist that I talk to. And I was so thankful that I had been a year and a half into that, where the first thing that clicked into me was like, okay, you can do this. I mean, like, if this happened last year, you'd probably be in a worse situation than you currently are now. So my whole thing was, okay, so what do I do? And I rented a keyboard from Rock and Roll Rentals, and I just started writing, because I found it as very much an opportunity to just try to get out of my own head and not keep up with the Joneses as much as we're all used to. So I shut down. I run our Instagram and social medias and all those things back then. So I shut down literally. There were no shows, there were no Joneses Keep, there's nothing. So I just shut down for 7 weeks. I was out. I had no interest in dealing with anything that was happening. I understood the news that was coming in, and normally I'm the kind of person who immediately will. Are you hearing those pings or?
Yeah, that's pretty loud. Is that you or me? I'm not seeing any notifications pop up.
That is me. How do I stop that?
Are you on your computer or your phone right now?
Yeah, I am on my computer. I
think if you go to if you go to like the far right corner of your whole thing, sometimes there's notifications. You might be able to switch. I don't know.
Let's see. Let's just hope it stopped.
Yeah, let's just go with it.
Yeah.
So you were saying you shut down the social media, and
I shut down the social media, shut down all the information coming in, and I just dug in within. I've always loved reading. I never had the chance to do that. I am through and through an immigrant, it's a constant. My whole life is, that front store where you live in the back type thing. So there's never a stop. I still have my mother and some family members back home. So I've never had that luxury. And it's weird that it sounds, I'm saying luxury, but over the past 8 months have moved from guilt to gratitude, because I just realized that what we're experiencing individually and globally is something that has never happened before. And whatever spin you put on that, whatever energy you put on that, is what you're going to get out of it. I was extremely grateful because I'm the first of 4 kids and my father is no more. And so my mother and the responsibility of her being taken care of falls a lot on me. She runs a school, but with the pandemic, everything closed down. And one of the things we don't ever think of is that we live in a country where you can get an unemployment check. That's not the same in the rest of the world. Definitely not that same way in Africa. So for me to be sitting in a situation where there was unemployment check coming in, and about 40% of it or 50% goes to what's taking care of my responsibilities to my mother, I was grateful for that, because I knew that if I wasn't living here, those same responsibilities would still fall on me. So, there were just those moments where it's like, dude, you are in the perfect place right now, and you just have to go with it. So I started, I live off of Travis Heights. There's a trail. I have never been on that trail, dude. I have never, ever, ever been on that trail. So I started, walking the trail, just trying to get out of my mind, because there were so many days where it's like, okay, dude, it's just you sitting in this chair with the fan spinning, and there's nothing else going on. Like, if you can get into that place and be comfortable with that, a lot of good things will flow from that. So from walking and keeping really active, my neighbor, I got into boxing about a year and a half, 2 years ago, and my neighbor noticed that I would lightly tap this pole that holds our carport. And I woke up one day, and he had wrapped something around it so that I can, keep, just lightly doing that. There were just all these generosities from everywhere, from the grants with, the grants, the music grants that were available, and all these things. I was just super thankful. So I just incorporated that into, like, wake up in the morning. If you can't write a song yet or get into something creative, that's fine. Go move your body. And, from walking the trail, I caught FOMO, because there are all these people riding bikes around, and I'm just like, dude, it seems like they go much faster, and this whole trip will be much faster. I hadn't ridden a bike since I was 14 years old. I got a bike. And I've been religiously doing about 12 miles, every day or every other day. I mean, and there was no one on the road. So it was good for me to regain my confidence, if I ever had any of that in biking, because I just knew that I wasn't going to get sideswiped from anywhere at all.
Right.
That has stayed. And then the record, we were fully done with this record. And I didn't see my guitar player for 6 weeks, which is the longest time that's ever happened. And we started looking at the body of work and saying, okay, this is the second time we've checked off on this. Might it be to our best interest to look at it a third time? And that's what we did, man. We went back into the studio, reopened all the things that we knew we had already signed off on, and realized, like, man, if there's any time to put the cherry on the top, it's right here. Between what's happening with Black Lives Matter, Trump for Life, and all these things. So we just went back in and actually took the hardest look we've ever taken on any project we've ever done, and we are pretty darn, crossing the T's and dotting the I's kind of band. And so, like, to go back in the third time and just this time be able to document it, because we never documented any other things, and realize what a push might be to release an album in an industry that seemed like it was non-existent, because without tours and all those things, there really is no, it seemed bleak for a long time. So during that whole time, I have always wanted to take a trip by myself, not with the band. And I took a 3-week trip, and I put my mattress in my car and went all the way to Montana. I saw Joshua Tree, Big Sur area up to Polk County, and so Yellowstone and Grand Tetons, and like went back around through Santa Fe, Denver, Park City, Utah, and for the first time, I realized that if I had come back to Austin and turned around and did that again, it would be absolutely different because there was no one on the road. There was, I wasn't worried about bars or restaurants because they were not open. It was literally swimming holes and national parks. I got my first, national park card ever. And I kind of thought of a better way to spend that time. And at the same time, there was so much going on in my head. Like most people, my license was expired. And so thinking of Black Lives Matter, Trump for life, license expired, license plate being from Texas, and Texas was pretty much the hub of that at that moment. I mean, there was a lot of freak out moments for me. Every time the navigation was like, take the scenic route, and you're like, sure, why not? You take the scenic route, and all of a sudden, it's Confederate flags popping up from different places, and like, what do you do then? For me, it's like roll down the windows, switch from whatever podcast I was listening to Bob Marley or Richard Pryor or anything like that to psych myself out of that mentality, because I knew that at the end of the day, no one was pushing that pedal. Like no one was hitting the throttle but myself. I had to be able to control that space. And since I've been back, I did a lot of recordings because with biking, I was able to get a camel backpack and I was able to attach my phone to the front so I could not just time lapse, but capture different things and at the same time be there in the present. And since I've been back, I have spent 3 days everywhere I've been writing from that standpoint. I'm going to turn it into like a little coffee book or something like that. And then it requires, research as well, because, you see those trees. Well, what the fuck are those tall trees? Well, they're aspen trees, and aspen trees are the largest organisms other than mushrooms because they're all connected. If one thing, like there are all these research that goes into it, but it just felt like the perfect, because I was so thankful and grateful that I had the opportunity to do that. It didn't seem like something I could just not write about. Maybe that's the artist in me, maybe that's the artist in us, where every single thing we're like, whoa, hold on a second, like let's peel this back, what's going on. But I just felt like my way of giving back to that time that I was able to spend, knowing fully well that up until March 11th, there is no way if you told me that I'll still be living in this apartment 8 months later without having worked, I would basically call you, fat ass liar. But we've all been conditioned that the shoe's about to drop, and it never did. And I think that that's also a beautiful thing. Things have opened up a little bit more, and I'm able to see some friends. And I'm realizing that people are more comfortable in their neurosis. They're more comfortable in who they are. And that's because whether you've done the work or not, when all the distractions have been taken away and you've had some time to sit with yourself, then I think you come out not just even enlightened, because that might not be the word for other people, but just more confident of who you are at that moment. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I think that when the doors open again, whatever that means, it's just going to be a flood of a lot of people coming out because people are cooked up, because we're beginning to play. We played a few shows. We finally released one of the singles called Mirror of the record, because that's the plan.
Sounds great. I was listening to it yesterday and today, man. Congratulations. Good job.
So much, man. Thank you. I appreciate that. There's a lot more of this song, but it just seems as if with the industry right now, yes, you have big bands that are releasing things, and that's because they have an audience that is waiting to get that. For us, it's, you have to be more strategic in how that ends up coming out, especially if there's no
Right.
touring behind it. If there's no purchasing of any, I mean, merchandise kind of sounds like the only way right now,
Right. Yeah.
It sounds like the only way right now.
Well, I'll give
But
you a little breather because that I want to unpack some of that amazing stuff you just gave me. But
yeah,
one thing you said was, which it's so funny because it's so true, and I've never heard it put that way. Even though I've heard the expression of keeping up with the Joneses, everyone knows what that means. Well, most people know what that means, and it's more so from a consumer angle. But as artists in this day and age, that's exactly what we're subject to through the social media platforms, is keeping up with the Joneses. You know what I mean? You get like this, you root for your friends, but you definitely get this like anxiety and this, any number of negative emotions just from keeping up with, other people in the industry. You see how amazing things are happening for people, and all this stuff, and it just makes you anxious. You know what I mean? It's not like it's even flat out jealousy or envy. It's just anxiety. And I got to say, I'm jealous that you were able to take such a sizable break. I've always been, critical of social media, like I think most are, but part of the way I've spent my last 6-7 months is kind of digging deeper into it. You know what I mean? And almost like a, if you can't beat them, join them mentality.
right,
And it hasn't really beat me up at all. I've just wanted to kind of strengthen up some of the virtual aspects of my
right,
brand, like through YouTube and stuff like that, and try to create more content. And it's been fine. Like, it hasn't eaten me up or anything, but I'm definitely keeping my eyes open for the next opportunity I have to take a long break, because I think a lot of people such as yourself have taken advantage of this time to do that. And I know some people who were specifically incredibly successful on social media that have
yeah,
literally taken a huge step back. So I'm looking forward to that at some point. There are a couple other things you mentioned. One was, how you're getting more physically active and how beneficial that is. And that's just once you get into that, it's just such a no brainer, isn't it? I mean, it's just like, I remember in the Marley documentary, I didn't know this about Marley. I knew he loved soccer, but in that, I think the most recent one, which is the really well done documentary, I think it came out a few years ago, one of the people said how, they had a set schedule each day for the most part when they were chilling at Marley's, compound. And it
mm-hmm.
always started with playing soccer. The first thing they did in the morning was play soccer for 2 hours. Then once they got their bodies all tuned in, that's when they started writing music. And so to hear that you're getting into the boxing and the biking and the trail hiking. Yeah, me and my daughter have been taking trail hikes like crazy the last month and a half. Never was a trail guy. That stuff's great. But you got it, you must be a convert now, right? I mean, you're probably going to be doing it the rest of your days, I would assume. I assume the benefits have been through the roof for you.
Absolutely. It's very, very much been that. I just, my whole thing has been, you wake up and I just don't even think about it. I can't think about it, because if I think about it, I'm just going to end up staying here. It's like I wake up, roll over, get on the bike and go. And there is this line that says, I'm probably paraphrasing loosely, but it says, no fool grows old, or no old man is a fool. And I have tried running my whole life. I flat-footed as fuck. I can't. I just don't enjoy it. And the whole idea of biking and being able to save some of that hard pound on the floor and have the boxing aspect of it, which is a very, very rhythmic thing, and it exercises a part of myself that I consider myself, pacifist to a certain point, but that doesn't mean you don't have an on and off switch. And to be able to work that switch where you can assess a threat when it's in front of you is a really, really important, it's a primal thing for every single one of us. So yeah, sometimes I'm doing that, and all of a sudden, based on what's happening, your mind's going other places, be it songwriting, be it whatever. So yeah, I'm definitely lifelong, it's one of those things where I take, visit the bike shops now, and, they're just like, well, your bike's too small, I'm like, yeah, I'm not hurting yet, so I'm just gonna keep going until I can afford to get quote unquote the right bike for my height and the
Sure.
size, and all that. But what you said about social media, the I for some people self care means not engaging. For me, self care means fully engaging. So it
Mhm.
was so strange that what I felt naturally, my instinct was to disconnect, because normally I would be all in it, like trying to read up on the news and all these and what's happening. And there was just a certain point where I realized like a lot of misinformation was out there, and at the same time,
Mhm.
I think this country for the first time was understanding and dealing with what it feels like for a lot of the other countries. Like I grew up in a place where, you didn't have five different kinds of milk. You had one or two different kinds of milk. That has changed a lot, but this was in the 90s. And then you show up and there's only one available, or shit, maybe it's not available. And what do you do then? So like the whole push to buy toilet paper and all these other things, I fully understood that, especially if you're coming from a place where you've never ever had to exercise that aspect of like, well, that may not be there, and it's not because you don't have the money, it's just that it's not there.
Mm.
So there's a lot of those things that were quite familiar to me. Growing up in the regime I grew up in Nigeria, where I I don't know why, but I just knew that I needed a break from it all.
Mm.
And that was
Mhm.
7 weeks was enough. And also, um, working behind the scenes was the most important thing for me at that point in time. Like we got to record. We realized there was a lot of live streams coming up and things, and we made a conscious decision to go to a space and record. A bunch of songs and pick 3 or 4 songs, and know that those songs, were paid. There was a sound guy, there was all those things done where it was quality. And at that point in time, anytime any sort of live stream opportunity came up, instead of like running helter skelter, like I said, I hadn't seen JT in like 6, 7 weeks. So instead of running helter skelter, it was just like, here it is, here it is, so that we could still
Mhm.
be in that flow of the things that were coming up. And of course, it was almost always matched with some sort of a benefit, like a night in Austin, and then the Willie Nelson picnic. Then there are a few things that we chose, but the most important thing was making sure that I was good, he was good, band members were good, so that we can get back into like working on songs and taking this time to you know individually make sure we're fine, and then coming back and attacking it. So the social media thing got when we realized, okay, this is a single we're going to do and all that, then we began um uh, ramping up all the things that was necessary. But to like be a sort of a marketplace for fear and all those things that were going on just didn't feel right. I felt like, yes, I could post about something, um, but we have such a short attention span, and that's gone in like a day, versus I can take in all the information, uh, 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 um, and put it in my work, and that
Mhm.
lasts even longer than when I'm alive. Um,
Yeah.
a friend said something that said, without contrast, there's no perspective. And that's pretty much, I think, what our motto was at that point in time is, there's
Mm.
so many information coming in. And for me as a black man, there's a lot of, because we were slowed down for the first time in a long time, where there was, you didn't have the excuse to say, oh, yo, I just pulled a double or triple double or whatever, I can't pay attention to this. That was gone. It's like in
Mhm.
your face. And so some people are recognizing things that, a part of their citizens have deal with on a daily basis. And that was great. to see the response on that, and continuously see the response on people being quote unquote woke or whatever. But I deal with this on a daily basis. I looked at the songs we've written as a band, and almost every single subject, every single song has a subject in there. So I felt like I didn't really have to. I mean, it's been said, and it will continuously always be said. The fact that other people are getting activated is a beautiful thing, because it's a we problem. It's not my problem or it's a we problem. We realize that, we are the only people, like no one's going to come save us. Like we're the only ones that can do that. So I just put that into my work, and that was the most significant place that I could, make a statement, as we've always
For
done.
sure. Yeah, and that's the whole trick with this. Like I mentioned, a lot of people are kind of tuning out of social media, which is fantastic. And of course, that documentary came out, which probably illuminated what a lot of people were already feeling, the social dilemma.
Yep.
But the other thing you mentioned, which I had familiar experience with you. First of all, it's great to hear about your traveling. That's always an exceptional way to spend time, and it's so hard for most people to do that when you're locked into a job. So I'm so happy that you were able to explore the beauty of the country and tune out of the nonsense and just tune into yourself and tune in with the earth and all that good stuff. And what you're saying about writing, I was fortunate to go on a long tour by myself right before the lockdown started. So I was on the road all last winter, and I had never been on a long tour by myself before. And that's exactly what I was spending a lot of my downtime doing, was writing. It must have taken me a few weeks to kind of pick it up and say, look, you got some extra time here. Why not start, writing? And I would do just free writes where it's just nonsense coming out. And then I bring other things into it and all kinds, but man, is that constructive. And I got so much good out of that. So it sounded like you had a very, very similar experience. I want to get to your backstory, because you have such a great, unique backstory. And I know you're an immigrant, and I'm married to an immigrant. She's from India. She moved here when she was 15. I believe I read just a few hours ago that you moved when you were 18.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit about coming from Nigeria. Obviously, well, not obviously for some, but I it's important to note that Nigeria is a incredibly rich musical place, possibly one of the most rich musical places outside of the Western world. Obviously there's classical music and there's pop music in the West, and blues and jazz and stuff, but Nigeria has this incredible music history with Fela and all kinds of stuff. But tell us a little bit about your musical roots in Nigeria, and what were some of the factors in you coming over to the States when you were 18, doing such a big thing by yourself, which I believe was the case. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I'm Nigerian, but I grew up in République du Benin, which is French speaking. That's right next to Nigeria, is Francophone. And 18, yes, I moved to the US, but my background very much was in the choir. That was the only place I felt like I could just go and release anything that was ailing me or troubling me. But I didn't consider myself a songwriter. I was very much like a singer, and it didn't take until moving here and having all these identity crises that most immigrants have to begin to realize that I could write these things. And even at that point in time, there were more poetry than there were, songs. And that has followed all through my life. I love the Jeff Buckleys and the Tracy Chapmans and the Dylans for a reason. And that's because of that. It's very much, it sounds to me like poetry that is backed up with music. But growing up in a very rhythmic continent, it's something where sometimes I feel like my music is very much what Nigerian music is just you know, with a different palette or different sounds, because it's talking about real things, but the music is so most times so joyous. It's there's gyrations, grooves, and all these things going, and you know, you're dancing, and then you know, at a certain point in time, it's almost like a time release capsule. At a certain point in time, the words start hitting you, and it's like, should I be dancing to this? You know, like I grew up with that, and that has never ever left me. But when I was moving to the US, I knew that I was coming here for music. My parents said school, but I knew I was coming here for music. And so I did the school, then just get, you know, parents off your back. And I started with open mics and doing poetry. And then from poetry, I bought a guitar because, like, you know, I'd show up and I'd feel like I'm spitting wax or something, and then some dude to show up with a guitar and sing about a cuttlefish, and then you know all of a sudden he gets all the chicks and all the attention, and there's a part of my brain that was like, man, you need to get into the songwriting thing, you know, like literally it's already there, just you figure out, you know. But I was in Rochester, New York. I formed a few bands, made some friends, and working 40, you know, to 60 hours a week. And at a certain point in time, I was running 3 open mics and also going to school, 16 credits, just like every immigrant does. It's just like pile up on pile up on pile. It's, you remember sacrifices, you know, everybody that is dependent on you. And I got to the point where I actually like had a breakdown, like straight up. I remember my doctor saying, "Well, you need to figure out what it is, you know, like you either go into school." Luckily for me, it was towards the ending of school, but it's just like your workload and your everything you're doing is just a little too much. We never get to tell ourselves that, especially as immigrants, because you just, you know, all you're just seeing is that so many other people would want this opportunity here. So it was really during that 2 weeks breakdown or whatever, and I was finishing with school, that my best friend moved like a week before I moved to to the US, from Benin, and he got accepted into grad school here in Austin, and he said, "Why don't you check out Austin?" Because I was going to move back to New York City, and he said, and I, you know, like everyone who's living in New York, it's like, you know, what the fuck am I going to do in Texas type thing. But within those 2 weeks, I checked it out, and it happened that DirecTV had an all access pass 2007 to South by Southwest, and I watched that at home for 2 weeks, and I put in my 2 weeks notice, and my job was like, well, you might as well just leave. I mean, you're not here anyways. And so I did. 5 days after my 25th birthday, I drove my 1998 Ford Escort that had like 6 different colors, you know, just parts that fit. And I'd remember I before I left, I had this conversation with my car. I was like, if you get me to Austin in one piece, I will write you a song. And that song is called Austin Bound. That was in the very first record I did when I moved to Austin. And I got here, and it was, you know, I knew the process and the things that have worked for me before, which was open mics. Open mics were huge in Austin in '07. Rudu Maya, Irie Bean, I think House Wine was doing one there. But I literally had a whole list of all the places that hit, because that was my thing. It's like, I am making this jump, leaving a relationship and all these things to come here. I have to make that work. At the same time, I have to have a job while I'm doing that. So it happened to be Apple. I worked for Apple like 3 times. Every time I went on tour, I'd lose the job and I'll come back and I'd get it, until I finally decided I wasn't gonna do that anymore. But that was my plan. It was like, hit up open mics. People are nicer. Have your little mailing list in the clipboard, because that's what it was then. You know, it was that MySpace. Facebook maybe had been coming out then, but
totally. I remember that, man. Absolutely. And that's what I did when I first moved here. I moved in 2000, at the beginning of 2011. And that first year, it was just a ton of open mics. I remember going to the Rudamaya one, and what was the
Mhm.
one on Barton Springs that had that over? It's like right before you get to Lamar.
Yeah, it's called
Flipnotics. Flipnotics, was
Hypnotics.
that it? Yeah, I
Hypnotics.
remember going to that one.
Yes.
Yeah, I went
Yes.
to all those ones. Yeah, I had the same game plan when I moved here as well.
Yeah. Because I mean, you could. My whole thing back then, and very much, I don't know if that's still the same for younger artists coming up or whatever. But before you approach a venue, especially a reputable venue, you want to make sure that you're going to at least bring 50, 60 people there. And I felt like open mics are perfect search engines. There are perfect places where you go and you perform and you get your name out there, and you had the clipboard back then. These days, it's Instagram or whatever. And then you can reach out to those people who are so excited to see you finally play somewhere that isn't there, and they come out in droves, and the hard thing becomes after the third, fourth gig, like, are people still coming? I just say your friends and family, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But Rudamaya was huge for me because I was able. They had a live band that would accompany you on your songs, and from there, that band became the band that recorded my first record. And Kurt Ganem, who's a sound guy at 1-to-1 Bar, he was the sound guy at Rudamaya then. And then from that, they became my backing band. These shows,
Wow.
pretty pricey, but at the same time, I just knew that I was walking into reputable places, and I wanted to show up like that with the crowd as well as the musicianship. And and it's evolved that whole time up to the point where we started playing at a Continental Club Gallery, which was a huge thing. And then my partner JT, band the band is really JT and myself. We got together even before that, 2 years before that, or 3 years before that. We've been playing together. We talked about this 2 days ago, together for 10 years now. I mean,
it's a good run. Is that pretty much when the electric joint kind of was manifested? What year was the KALU and the electric? When did that start?
Yeah, that was about, so I think we started at the gallery at 2010 or 2011. And we did, it was supposed to be a month in, and it ended up being 2.5 years or 3 years there. Every Monday, then moved to Thursday, then shows downstairs. But after a while, you begin, like any, I mean, artists are constantly wondering, like, we just, there's some comfortable, I don't know, like there's motion, there's transit. We're always questioning things, even when they're all good. And there was a certain point in time where the question came about, are people coming to see us because we're playing at the Continental Club? Or are they coming to see us because they're coming to see KALU James play? And we decided to move the residency somewhere else. And we moved it to the Stay Gold. And the question became, what do we call this? Because we wanted to make it an event, make it something. And it became KALU James Presents the Electric Joint. And then we did that. It was a bi-weekly thing. We did that for, I think, about maybe 6 months or something. And then I went back to Africa because I went back to Africa. And while I was there, JT and I, of course, were in contact and trying to figure out what this, and finally it was like, dude, it's right there. It's absolutely right there. It's KALU and the Electric Joint. And that's how that morphed. And that's been, I think we're in our 4th year now, which is, there's a lot of relinquishing of control that goes into that as well, because you have your band, and I've always I grew up very much like, dude, you doing it. There's no one coming to save you. It's all you. You just keep going.
Mhm.
And then JT came along, and I had been a fan of his forever, forever. As a matter of fact, as a matter of fact, as much as we were fans of each other, we just really didn't like each other either. You know, it was just
Hmm.
like this dude. He thought I was too good to be true. I thought he was, I don't know, too pump. I'm not sure. I didn't. We just never connected. You know.
Mhm.
And can you still see me all right? I feel like
You-
it got dark.
You're coming through great. No, you're
Okay,
coming through
great.
real good. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Um, uh, but you
Yeah, it's
know,
funny how that can happen with the music. Like that was one of the main inspirations for starting this podcast, was because we have so many, we get to hang out with each other from time to time, but so much of the musician, back and forth is kind of, I'm going on stage, you're coming off stage, or some formulation of
right,
that. And there's so many people we all admire, like you're talking about JT. We like love what they do, but then it doesn't take much for something to get, you don't have a lot of time to flesh any,
right,
whether it's just a cocktail or a long talk like this. And it's so easy to like get the wrong idea about someone just because, maybe they're coming off stage, or maybe they're having a bad day, or maybe whatever. And then all of a sudden, like a 3-second interaction you had with somebody becomes your source of what you think of that person, even though that had nothing to do with anything. And
right.
it's weird how you get these little. It's so funny to hear you say that about JT, how you loved him and admired him, and yet there was this weird un unnamed tension or something at the beginning of the relationship that didn't even have a face. It just kind of existed there. And that's I can speak to that as well. It's like you see somebody play, and then you want to talk to them, but they're only off stage for a minute, and then like you get this feeling, even though it's not true, that they're kind of blowing you off, or maybe they don't respect you as much. You think they don't respect you as much as you respect them, and then it morphs into this whole useless ball of personal anxiety. But that's funny. That's funny to hear, man.
That's
I didn't
true. I
mean to
mean,
interrupt you, but yeah, go ahead.
no, 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 no. That's so true. You know, it ends up being like we pour what we're going through, or what we, are what we assume is happening onto the mirror, which is so not true. And
Yeah.
I have this thing about not wanting to meet my idols or people I admire. I've always been like that. Because
They warn you against that. They said, I've heard people say that, like, it's going to be disappointing. That's what they say.
exactly, like
Yeah.
I personally consider myself a conduit. Like, yes, I've gone through my experiences and stuff, but when songs are coming through me or whatever, it's because I am open to be able to get
Hmm.
that and put it out there. Not saying you don't work
Hmm.
for it, but that's a different story. But like, you're a conduit. So when I fall in love with a song or fall in love with someone's record, I'm in love with the message. The person, not I'm not going to say not really. I love everyone, but it doesn't make me want to meet that person, because I know we are human, and
Hmm.
and maybe it's something on my part, but I don't want to meet you on your bad day, because I
Hmm.
have this fear that I may not give you that wick of humanity. I may not give
Right.
you that whole, like, yeah, dude, I'm sure you had a bad, it just, I don't want that. So like, for me, it ends up being like, yo, you're fucking incredible, and we're just gonna keep it right there. And with JT and I, it actually, we ended up dating twins, and
That's
like
interesting.
it went very, very
Wow.
interesting. Yeah.
That's
And that
funny.
went from that's actually how, and he hit the band. He was in this band called Dirty Bird, who I absolutely loved. I loved the power. I loved everything. Like, they made everything shudder. And it kind of felt like the soul inside of me that, hadn't come out yet or whatever. Um, and of course, when you're, dating pretty much a family, all of a sudden there are hangs happening, and his band
Hmm.
was, I think, had fizzled out or had ended at that point in time. And I was like, oh, perfect time. And I had a guitar player at that point in time. But anyways, it just that connection and where he was moving, where I saw myself morph into, and where and the stripes he had gotten from not only just being a guitar player and a songwriter, but a sound like a recording artist, and being able to run the studio. It was just a perfect marriage. And then I realized that we were very, very much alike, which is one of those things that always ends up happening. It's like you're kind of seeing yourself over there, and maybe it's the part of yourself that you haven't actualized yet, or a part of yourself that you had been there, done it with. But there's always something when you look. There's this line that goes, whatever you're against weakens you. And I think it has a lot to do with, there is something of yourself that you're seeing in that person, in that situation. If you if you dig deep, you realize that, okay, yeah, it's just because it's me, and we
Totally.
are most times worse to ourselves than we are to anyone else. So you end up,
Totally. Well, it's funny that you have the wherewithal to acknowledge that you don't want to meet your heroes, or for the most part, because I'm somebody who is always interested in meeting somebody I admire. But you're totally dead on, and I actually have the exact same perspective as you do, as being a conduit to the music. That's just the way. I just learned that early on about writing, is you just kind of set your body and mind in a good place to be that conduit, and then you let the conduit. I think we both use marijuana quite to facilitate that quite a bit. I know I do. So I've always seen myself as a conduit. Like when the writing process is just, I set my mind and body in a place that's ready to go, and then I let the rest of it take care of itself. But I've never even taken the time to put that on, to acknowledge that in all those musicians I admire. But I mean, I haven't had the chance to meet any of my heroes except one or two anyway. But but that's because you always hear about like somebody who waits in line for 3 hours for their athletic hero or their musical hero, and they're waiting there, and then the person blows them off, and then they rip up the picture, and it's over, right? It's
yeah.
So yeah, no, that's you're definitely ahead of the ball in that frame of mind. So I got a great picture for how you've been able to maximize the time that you've had over the last 7 months, and kind of where it all comes from in your journey. Where do you see yourself moving forward from today? What does your next 3 to 6 months look like? Obviously, ton of stuff still up in the air. Nobody really knows, even though we're 7 months into this, nobody really knows how much longer it's going to be. Do you have target dates where you're going to try to start doing more shows or release the album you've talked about? And what are you planning for the next 6 months or 12 months?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what shows are right now, dude, to be quite honest with you. I don't think anyone does.
I know.
I think that, we might have a better chance at throwing our show, throw something that is in a backyard, or you rent a building because these buildings are not open right now or whatever. And there's a lot of power, I think, coming back into, the artists, especially the independent, because people, do want this music. But it's the record who spends time. And even after that, we have about 20 new songs. During this time, I was able to, thanks to Uncle Sam, I was able to get a little recording studio thing in my house, Universal Audio, all that stuff. And I've been messing with a lot of sound because when I rented the keyboards from Rock and Roll Rentals, I was writing, but there were no words coming out. And, it's one of those things where you begin to like beat yourself down, because it's just like, this is a time. We always say we want this time. We never have this time as artists. And here it is. Right. And it's like, there's nothing coming out. And it literally took, talking to a few people to, to understand that this is a forced shutdown, like be easy on yourself. So I started playing keys with no words. And without words coming out for myself, I started reading. a lot more than I've ever done in my life. Over a dozen books I've read this past 7 months, and then spending my time in words on other people's words and their perspective, and writing songs or just playing without anything. I let that happen to a point where there was like this perfect marriage. All of a sudden, I got re-inspired, re-energized. It wasn't even before the trip. It was just, surrounding myself with words and songs. So like I've written a bunch of stuff here. JT and I have written a bunch of stuff. And actually this week we go back into the studio because it's gotten to a point where we know, what the songs, where they're kind of going. And it's like, well, now let's spend time with these songs. So that's going to be happening within, over the next 3-6 months. At the same time, simultaneously, there will also be the release. We would like to probably put out another single before the end of this year. That would make it 3 singles we've had in the year, and then drop the record next year. I would love to travel again. I know it's snowing and stuff, but now that I actually have this little studio setup that is portable, it'd be great to go get some sounds out in the wild or something, and kind of incorporate that into something. The snow scares me a little bit.
Well, you were in New York for 4 years, right?
I was in New York for 7 years actually. I'm good with, yeah, like I'm good with the snow, but it just adds that little extra tinge, especially when you're up in like Santa Fe's and the Colorados and all these places. It's like you better watch out.
Yeah, for sure. So said, this winter tour I went on, it was the first. I've done lots of touring over the years. It was the first winter tour I've ever been on, and there's definitely, it adds a whole nother level of stress. I was very fortunate not to get caught in any bad stuff, but yeah, I know what you mean for sure. It causes a whole nother level
by yourself too. I mean, that's
totally.
That has to be intense. And at the same, I think we all romanticize about, the winter. I love walking on snow. There's just something about, there's a difference between just walking on actual road and then actually hearing your steps while you're walking. There's just something about that. It does something for me in my brain. It's almost like I'm here, type thing. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of trying to ramp up, what the next 6 months, would be with release of records and, staying current by writing, new songs. But it's felt great to play some of these songs. Yes, they're not out yet, but play some of these songs live. We got to play Blues on the Green last weekend, which was the first time I've ever done that. And it's just, I mean, yes, it is strange playing in front of people just sitting down. I would tell you that. Absolutely. So you end up playing for yourself, but to hear these songs the way they were intended and on the speakers, and not worry about how loud it is, it's just, there was, man, I you kind of forget how much energy we put into this, man. We really do. The load in, the load out, the connections. I ended up playing a few gigs this week, and I came home on Saturday, Halloween, and I thought we'd play the private gig, which was something that was a benefit. Not a benefit, but it benefited like Central Food, Texas Bank, or whatever. Texas Food, I don't know, something like that. The privates end up being, for me, a lot more personal, and there's just a lot more you try and engage. But I came home Halloween day and I lay down in my bed and I slept from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. Just out, done. And I realized what it was. It's just, I'd had 3 gigs last week and I hadn't had that in so long, but it felt amazing. It felt absolutely amazing. It's like, oh, I have a purpose now. You know, there's a little bit of that. You know, there's been a lot of that identity, which is a good thing. We have to do that. Like, what am I
Mhm.
outside of the music? Because
Yeah.
this love of ours takes so much of us to make it a thing that it's so easy to think that that's the only thing. And I think over this pandemic and the shutdown, there's been that realization of, oh yeah, there is that. And it might be what you put your whole life on, but what are you outside of that? And I don't think it's something that a lot of people get to question. I mean, and it's not just music, any job. And you see it with people losing, when someone loses a job, it's like all your identity is absolutely gone.
Mhm.
And that's because
Yeah.
it's a system that has been set up to make you feel that way. I believe that 100%. You work 40 to 60 hours, you get maybe Saturday, because on Sunday you have to get ready to go back. So there's no time to
Mhm.
think about your insides. There's no time to think about who you are. There's no time to research on what's actually happening around. And all those things, I believe personally, are insidious and set in place for you to feel like you don't have the power of one. And I think that a lot of that is changing. I hope that a lot of that is changing. I hope that people are beginning to understand, and not understand, but just like activate to the point where they know that they are powerful beyond belief. And yes, there is a government that has set things in place for so long, but the power of the people, the power of one, and connecting with someone else because they understand what you are saying, which is kind of what we do in music, but in a bigger sense, um, um, it's in our best interest as humans to realize that we can change, that we can, that we're really, really powerful, and
Mhm.
it's one of the hardest things to manifest when you're surrounded by things that have been set up for, hundreds and hundreds of years. But that doesn't mean we can't dream, you know.
Yeah, man, totally. It's that is definitely one of the pros, I think, for most people of this whole time is getting that time to look like, wait a minute, all right, I've been going in this groove I'm in now for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. And then you get a chance to step outside the groove and take a look at where you came from, where you're at, where do you want to go. But it's so funny what you said about how tired you were, because I had a private gig a few weeks ago, and man, I've been hauling my amps around for 12, 15 years. I couldn't believe how tired my arms were just from carrying my amp around. I was like, oh my God, I've gotten so soft here. I'm carrying around a 50-pound amp, and I feel like I gotta, my arms are gonna fall off. Yeah, we got to get our fighting form back, man.
For real,
Um,
man.
but I just want to ask you one more question, because you have such a unique. Well, we all kind of have this similar but unique relationship with Austin. Austin's been such a special place for so many of us, but it's also this place that is evolving so fast that I'm always interested to know what everyone's kind of current take on it is. You know, Obviously we see what's going on with COVID and its effect on the music economy and the effect on the musicians and the venues. As far as I'm concerned, I was noticing a very palpable change in Austin as much as like 2 years ago. I could see the actual music economy starting to hit its high point and starting to go down. So it's still I still love Austin. Austin's been so good to me and I love it. But it's certainly changing very fast. And what are your thoughts on, and maybe you can kind of, as we wrap it up here, encapsulate what you think the actual music industry has in store, but in kind of a microcosm of Austin being such a music town. You've been here 3-4 years longer than I have. You've seen such a kind of, depending on how your arc looks for you, but where do you see this town going, and where do you see the industry going with everything that's happening?
Well, Austin is a music town. Like, yes, there's tech and there's all these things coming in, and I believe 100% that either you're changing or you're hanging. Either you're changing or you're dying. Like
Right.
change is inevitable. It has to come.
Yes.
That's kind of what happens when you live in a cool city like we do.
Right.
But we also have to keep saying that Austin is a music city.
Mhm.
That has to be important to the city officials. That has to be important to the developers. I mean, when you think of, you know, Formula One and then the sports, the soccer team coming in, I'm forever an optimist. That's the way I grew up. I grew up in a place where a lot of things were stacked against you on the daily basis, and if you ever lost hope, it was over, done, just like that. So my condition is that, and my condition is that all these things actually bring a lot more international eyes to the city and the music and the arts. For example, a good friend of mine, Chris Rogers, who's this amazing muralist in town, you know, he's like on one of the billboards for this, you know, the soccer stadium coming just because of what he does. But the city officials have to remember you don't bite the hand that feeds you. And I believe that with all these major things, because it's a major city, it's very past few years is very much becoming a major city. So it requires the city recognizing on the shoulders of which it stands, and maybe that itself even brings in all the things that we as musicians have lacked here, which is the industry of licensing, the industry of, you know, booking agents that aren't just, you know, that are national and international, because we're beginning to get all these flavors here. So I'm truly hopeful for it. I think that if we continue to remember that it's a music city, then the city officials and the council members and all that would spend all they can in making sure that the music doesn't move out of here, because as we know, that's already happening, and that comes from affordable housing, that comes from the you know, the rate of things. I mean, everything is getting expensive. It's that simple. Yet at the same time, that tough, and we are so used to cutting ourselves short every time, be it ticket prices, be it amount for merch, be it for all these things. Well, we're in a pandemic, and if the music has not existed for a while now, and if you want to go see music because of the sanitary and the health whatevers that are involved with that, the ticket's going to be a little higher, especially for, you know, the musicians and the service industry people who haven't had, you know, any income for a long time. Like, it's gonna take a community, and taking a community means, back to what I said before, the city officials and the city of Austin understanding that music is the reason why a lot of the things that are happening here are happening right now. It's because that's been the heart and soul of this place for so long. So I love this place between health, between Ham and Sims, and, you know, the Trail Foundation. There's just so many things that are here that makes it conducive for us to be here and create here and call this home. And there just has to be a bigger support on that, and not just go where the money is. And even with the money coming in, that should be reappropriated to the right places, I think.
I hear you. Yeah, it's tricky, man, because you know, the government or city officials, whatever you want to call it, the end game is I don't even know how much power those people actually have. You know, I mean, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, we'll see. I could go on, and I'm sure we both could, but yeah, I think, you know, you see what's happening in California. I mean, people are moving out of California, and California has always been one of the most creative, cool, yes, expensive, but beautiful places of the country and the world. And now people are fleeing there. They're, you know, it's not working there. So maybe some of the more Texas things about Austin that some Austinites might have in the past been like, oh, we're Austin, we're not Texas, we're Austin. Maybe some of those Texas things will be of benefit to us. Who knows? But yeah, a lot to be seen. I think a lot, personally, like I thought by this time, okay, we've done our time. It's time, I'm going to start looking in the new year for playing gigs, doing more stuff. But I don't know, man. We're hitting new record highs and everything. I think we might only be halfway through this thing, maybe a third of the way through. Who knows? But I think the real work is coming up, because I think, like you said, we've all found our ways to improve and learn. And now that a lot of us are getting back in, coming around to like, okay, now it's time to get back to this, or now it's time to get a job, or now it's time to get back on the road. And those aren't actually feasible. Now
Right.
It's like, okay, now what do we do? So
Right.
I think we'll be okay. I think we'll be fine. There's
hope
work to be done.
there is a lot of work to be done. I mean, you're right, with the numbers going up, and Europe seeming like they're closing again. Like it almost seems like we got this part where we're like, I know how to handle this, and all of a sudden it's like, I am ready. I'm so much better than I was 8 months ago, and then all of a sudden there's this whole thing going on, and this is what I've been worried about right here. It's like, what ends up happening here? But I really hope that all the people that I love and look up to in the music and the creative industry are still around, because there's a lot of us falling like flies, and it absolutely makes sense. If there's any time this is the time we're never ever gonna forget. This is a time where those pivots, which I hate that word now because it's been used so many times, but this is a time where those things really happen, and it makes sense. If a restaurant closes down for 8 months and they were an Asian restaurant and they reopened and now they serve, American food, you'll never question it. You'll just say, oh yeah, something changed. And I think that a lot of that is happening. People who had jobs that were corporate jobs and had the little time now and have tapped into maybe their artist side are going to emerge as that. And then people who have been artists all their lives are saying, oh dude, this is so not, I can't do this ever again. So there's a lot of that going on, and yeah, I'm just trying to stay calm in the middle of all.
It sounds like you're doing good. It sounds like you're doing really good by yourself. So I would say just keep doing what you're doing, because it's working very well. You look great, you sound great, and your new music sounds great. So just keep at it, and I'm sure you'll be fine, man. But thanks, man. Thank you so much. Yeah, no problem. And thank you so much for doing this, Kalu. And I really like the new music you put out. I look forward to hearing the album when it comes out. And I look forward to hopefully bumping into you sometime.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That would be a lovely day. I really think that my friends who have kids and have, a wife or, a girlfriend right now are actually the real superheroes. So like, seriously, much love. And I would not know what to do with myself if either of that was true right now. So like, seriously, whatever cape you got that I don't see behind you, just may that keep flying with a lot of wind, man.
Of course, man. It's all good. It's been nice to be home with the kid. I mean, like I said, I was on tour for a long time before this, so it's been like a very natural even and out. So it's been really great. And now mom and papa are ready for the norms to resume in terms of daycare and school and jobs and all that. So we only have the one. I feel for the parents that have multiple kids, because that everyone I talk to who has multiple kids, it's like, it's another level of everything. So, but anyway, man, thank you so much. I wish you the best, and take care of yourself.
You, man. Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Peace, man.